Long ago, there was a wicked troll, or perhaps it was a goblin, who crafted a magical mirror unlike any other. This mirror had no beauty in it, for it reflected everything in the worst way possible. Lovely landscapes turned into wastelands, kind faces looked twisted, and even the purest hearts appeared dark and ugly. The troll was proud of his creation, for he loved to mock goodness. His students carried the mirror high into the sky, laughing as it distorted the world. But as they rose higher, the mirror slipped from their hands. It fell to the earth and shattered into countless pieces, some no bigger than grains of sand. These shards scattered everywhere, carried by winds across villages and cities. If one lodged in someone's heart, it would freeze into ice, leaving no room for love or joy. If a piece entered someone's eye, it would twist their vision, making them see only cruelty in the world. Not far from where many shards fell, lived two children, Kay and Gerda. They were neighbors and best friends, more like brother and sister. Their houses were close, with windows that faced each other, and between them grew a beautiful rose garden. In summer, the roses climbed across their windows, and the two children would sit among the blossoms, reading stories, whispering secrets, and watching the bees hum lazily in the sun. They shared everything, from simple meals to laughter, and their bond was so pure that even the roses seemed to bloom brighter for their friendship. But one winter, everything began to change. Snow fell thick and heavy, turning the city white. One day, Kay pressed his nose against the frosty glass, watching the flakes whirl in the wind. They looked like tiny bees, but sharper, colder. His grandmother told him tales of the Snow Queen who ruled over ice and storm. She was said to appear in the heart of snowflakes, shining like crystal, her eyes glittering as with frost. Kay laughed at the idea, saying snow was only frozen water, nothing more. Yet deep inside, he felt a strange thrill at the thought of such a queen. Then came the day when fate struck. While Kay and Gerda played in their garden, a sharp sting pricked Kay's eye. He cried out, clutching his chest, for another sting pierced his heart. Neither child knew that a shard from the wicked mirror had flown into him. Almost instantly, Kay's expression hardened. He no longer admired the roses. He called them ugly. When Gerda wept, he mocked her tears. The warmth that once filled him turned to coldness. From that day, Kay changed. He snapped at Gerda, laughed cruelly, and grew restless, especially in winter. One evening, Kay hitched his little sled to the carts of grown-ups, sliding through the snowy streets. Suddenly, a tall white sleigh appeared, shining like silver, drawn by white horses. Inside sat a woman cloaked in fur, her face dazzling, her crown glittering with frost. It was the Snow Queen herself. Kay felt no fear, only fascination. She beckoned him closer, kissed his forehead, and the cold spread through him until he no longer remembered warmth. Without a word, she wrapped him in her cloak and carried him off into the swirling night, leaving Gerda alone in their garden, calling his name. When morning came, Kay was gone, and Gerda's heart broke. At first, the neighbors thought he had drowned in the river, for his sled was nowhere to be found. Gerda searched along the banks, calling his name until her voice grew hoarse, but the river flowed calmly, giving no answer. Desperate, Gerda dropped her little red shoes into the water, begging the river to return her friend. The current carried them away, but Kay did not come back. She wept bitterly, yet deep inside she felt he was still alive. With courage burning stronger than fear, Gerda set out to find him. She walked for hours, until her feet ached, and finally rested in a small boat tied at the shore. She climbed inside, but the rope came loose, and the boat drifted into the wide, flowing river. At first she was frightened, but soon she trusted that perhaps the water would guide her to Kay. The river carried her past fields and forests until she reached a garden filled with flowers of every color. A kind woman, who seemed like an enchantress, greeted her warmly and offered food and rest. The garden was so lovely that Gerda almost forgot her sorrow. Roses climbed along the walls, and yet when Gerda asked about her friend, the flowers could not answer. Each blossom sang of its own little story, but none had seen Kay. Only the roses, when she pressed them close, whispered that he was not buried in the earth. Hope returned to Gerda, and she left the enchanted garden, determined to continue her search. Her journey was long and filled with trials. She wandered through dark forests, where crows cawed from the treetops. One crow, noticing her tears, asked what troubled her. Gerda explained about Kay, and the bird told her he had seen a boy taken into a palace nearby. Gerda's heart leapt, thinking it must be Kay. With the crow's help, she sneaked into the palace at night. There, in a grand chamber, she found a boy sleeping on a velvet bed. She rushed forward, only to realize it was not Kay, but a young prince. The prince and princess, touched by her devotion, listened to her story. They were moved by her courage and gave her fine clothes, a warm carriage, and horses to continue her journey. But trouble soon found her again. Bandits attacked her carriage, scattering the servants. The fierce robbers captured Gerda and carried her to their camp deep in the woods. The leader's daughter, a wild little girl with tangled hair and sharp eyes, took Gerda as her own companion. Though rough, she was curious about Gerda's tale and asked about Kay. Gerda spoke with such love and sorrow that the robber girl's heart softened. One night, while the camp slept, the girl untied Gerda and brought her to the stable. She gave her a reindeer, a creature from the far north, where snow never melts. "Your friend is with the Snow Queen," the girl whispered. "She lives beyond the frozen lakes. Go, before I change my mind." With gratitude, Gerda mounted the reindeer, who sped across icy fields and howling winds. The further they traveled, the colder it grew. At last they reached the vast white land of snow and frost, where the northern lights blazed across the sky. Somewhere in this endless kingdom of ice, Kay was held captive by the Snow Queen. The reindeer carried Gerda as far as he could, but the cold became unbearable. At last he left her at the edge of a snow-covered forest, promising to wait. Alone, Gerda trudged onward, her breath freezing in the air. The northern wind howled, and the snow swirled in blinding storms. Yet her love for Kay gave her strength. She prayed with every step, whispering his name into the icy silence. Finally she reached a vast palace made of snow and ice. Its towers gleamed like glass, and its gates stood tall and sharp as crystal spears. This was the home of the Snow Queen. Inside, the halls stretched endlessly, glittering with frost. Cold light poured through frozen windows, casting blue shadows across the floor. In the center of a grand chamber sat Kay. He was pale and still, his eyes dull as glass, and his lips blue with frost. Before him lay a puzzle of icy shards, which the Snow Queen had set before him. She had told him that if he could form the word eternity with the pieces, she would make him master of the world. But the shard of the wicked mirror in his eye made the task impossible. He sat endlessly arranging the pieces, his heart frozen to stone. The Snow Queen herself was away, traveling across the world, scattering frost and storms, leaving Kay to waste away in the cold silence. When Gerda entered the chamber, she rushed to Kay, but he did not recognize her. He stared past her, mumbling about ice and patterns. Her heart broke, yet she would not give up. She threw her arms around him and began to weep. Her warm tears fell upon his chest and seeped into his heart. Slowly the shard of the mirror melted away, and his heart began to beat again. Kay shuddered, and warmth returned to his cheeks. Still, his eyes remained cold. Then Gerda sang the songs they used to sing together in the garden, and her tears fell into his eyes. At once, the shard that had blinded him dissolved, and he could see clearly again. He looked at Gerda, and for the first time in so long smiled. "Gerda, my dear Gerda, you came for me." Together they laughed and cried, their joy melting the icy puzzle into a pool of water. The Snow Queen's power over Kay was broken, for no magic in the world could withstand the purity of Gerda's love. They clasped hands and hurried from the palace. Outside, the reindeer awaited them, stamping its hooves impatiently. With the speed of the wind, it carried them away from the frozen north. across snowy plains, forests, and rivers, back toward the warmth of home. When they finally returned to their city, the roses bloomed once more in their garden. They sat beneath the blossoms, just as they had when they were children. Yet something had changed. They were no longer little ones, but grown in spirit through their trials. Their friendship, tested by frost and sorrow, had become stronger than ever. The wicked troll's mirror, though it had caused much pain, was powerless against their bond. For while cold may cover the earth, love has the strength to melt even the deepest ice. And so, Kay and Gerda lived on, side by side, with hearts forever warmed by the triumph of love over darkness.